Recording in progress.
Ready to go? We're waiting for Christine, or? Okay, at this time we're going to call to order the meeting of October 4th, 2021. City Attorney, is there anything you want to mention before we go to closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the City Council so moves, it will go into closed session to discuss the items agendized for closed session discussion, which are item number 1, conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A, existing litigation. Title of that case is LLXP Inc. versus City of Hollister et al. In San Benito Superior County Court, case number CU 21-00119. And item number 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B, 2 potential cases. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards?
We have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Burns,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Resendez,
Yes.
Mayor Velasquez.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Burns?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes.
Mayor Velazquez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. We'll now move to item A1. Mr. Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask that the minutes be amended to include the fact that during closed session, I excused myself of my own choosing. Well, one of 5 items was heard that had potential litigation, and I excused myself from item number 1.
Okay.
And that would complete my request. Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you. Any questions, comments from council? He just wanted that reflected onto the minutes that he excused himself from that item.
But I don't think I normally put closed session minutes on our minutes. Because I'm not in closed session.
It's just for the record, if you can just put he.
Okay.
Right, so and I'm sorry, I think I'm looking at the correct minutes here. And you may have said this, Councilmember Burns. It regarded item number 3, potential litigation, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So which item?
Item number 1.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Item number 3, potential litigation.
So noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Councilmember Burns?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes.
Mayor Velazquez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. We'll now move to item A2.
Thank you, Mayor. Number 2, I would just ask that there be an amendment on page 31 where it talks about line 1 where I made a motion and then line 2 where I seconded the motion. And I would like to be able to have that authority, but I believe Councilmember Perez seconded that motion for clarification. Thank you, Mayor.
I've been looking for that authority too. And all the votes.
Thank you.
Is there any questions from council? No speaker cards on this item, correct?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I was going to say, is Mr. Burns going to second that too?
I know, that's what I was waiting for.
There's a motion and second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Councilmember Burns?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes.
Mayor Velazquez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. We are now going to move to public input. This is the time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the city council. If you are joining us by Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you are joining us by Zoom using a cell phone, please press *9. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Joseph Elmhurst. Horst?
Hello, my name is Joseph Elmhorst. I'm a small business owner. I operate a mobile food facility called Steak Stop, and I found it very difficult to get through the bylaws and to really understand the regulations of what it is I can and can't do within the city limits and the guidelines. I've heard from different public officials several different things. Number one being that I could operate if I've been invited to a place of business by the business owner, and I can go ahead and do my my service there. I've also found that that isn't okay. I've also heard that you can have a food facility out in the like that technology parkway out by the airport. But even going through that process has been very difficult and very challenging. There's a lot of individuals like myself that have been displaced because of COVID. We're trying to find ways to combat what has happened, and you know, this is one of the areas that I personally have found that I could easily afford and really prosper personally and financially. I've been a part of this community for my entire life. I do call Hollister my home. I've always wanted to bring my service to this area, and you know, and that's what I want. This is a great opportunity for small businesses to kind of rebuild and to beat the pandemic and the challenges that were overcome. So I just really think that we need to talk about it and open up the subject again and find clarification on what can and can't be done, so that other people like me, and I know of at least 3 people that are either building trucks or in the process of buying trucks, that want to move into this into the city limits and do exactly what it is that I'm doing. So I'm not the only one, and if we don't prepare, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be displaced even further from this pandemic, and I don't think anybody wants that. So I really thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and hopefully we can do something about this.
Thank you for coming out.
More speakers, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. We are now going to move to item D1, City Manager Report.
Yeah, what I would say is anybody that, for food trucks, definitely talk to our planning department. Abraham Prado will definitely listen to you. He's right behind it also. So, and that's all I have to report.
I was going to say, I know we did have this conversation a few years back, and it was cleared up on how to do it correctly. So Mr. Prado can absolutely help you. Thank you for coming out. Do you have anything else, sir?
That was it.
Item D2, training and conferences.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me up here. We just had 2 employees that just got back from San Luis Obispo, attending the California Conference of Arson Investigators, where they do continuing education on their CVs, their curriculum vitae. So it's mandatory for them to be doing their continuous education, and they were able to get back into the class where they do various live fire simulations, investigations, and updating them all the current codes and laws.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank
Any
you.
questions from council? Any speaker cards?
No, Mr. Mayor?
And then, our Chief,
Chief, go ahead.
also.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We had 2 officers attend FTO school, field training officer school. So they received that mandatory training, reimbursable through post, so they can be our instructors for new trainees, new officers that we may hire. We also had a sergeant attend an IDI instructor technology course. That is Instructor Development Institute, which helps them become the teachers. And what we do is we later on send them to train-to-trainer courses, where then they become our own instructors in-house, and therefore save money for the additional training for our officers in the future. And we also had 3 individuals attend the Women Leadership in Law Enforcement conference that was put on by the California Police Chiefs Association. They do that every year. It's a really good event. It provides a lot of examples and a lot of instruction on leadership, and especially in regards to women in law enforcement. And that's the training we had in September.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any others?
That is it.
Thank you. We'll now move to item F1.
Looks like I'll do this one for everybody. So, thank you, council. What we're asking is for council to approve a professional services agreement with M.A. Jones, Inc. for cleaning services to provide citywide janitorial services for the city for the next 3 years. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, council?
Mayor
Councilmember Burns?
Velazquez. Thank you, sir. So, if I read the contract correctly, this would be for 3 years, and it's about $8,500 a month for a total of about $102,000 a year. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'm curious, I saw that we put out an RFP and there were three bidders. If I read it correctly, this recipient or proposed recipient actually operates business out of Gilroy, is that correct?
Correct.
Were either of the other two a local vendor?
I don't recall, I'm sorry.
Okay,
We have had a hard time trying to get people to bid in the past. I know that.
okay. I've said it before and I'll probably continue to say it, but I'm concerned why we don't have internal staff that could perform this task. And particularly with a full-time position and benefits, I think we could do this internally at that cost or maybe even less. I saw in the contract where they have 3 employees that they've identified, but my sense is those aren't full-time employees from having reviewed the contract and reviewing the scope of the work. And so I'm not going to support this. I would like to see it come in-house. And if the rest of the council views it differently, I would ask to, I saw where the insurance is $1 million, and we had this conversation just recently, I believe last council meeting, where if council is going to approve this, I'd like to see the insurance increase to the $5 million rate. And that concludes my questions and comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? I'll make a quick comment. It'd be great to have local companies doing it. I understand sometimes it just doesn't happen. This is a company we've had for a while here, and
Correct.
staff, I think you've all been pretty happy with the service they provided. I'm not opposed to having somebody in-house doing it, but I think at this point, if we're going to do that, maybe at the next 3-year point, we're looking at that and having a better review of if that's possible or how many facilities they visit in a day or how often. I think it'd be helpful to understand long-term. And as far as insurance, I think, yeah, we did have that conversation about insurance requirements going up, definitely. But I think it really comes down to what type of work they're doing. I think in this case, it's a cleaning service, so I don't think they can do much harm to any one facility. I know in construction, basically, it's $2 million is a minimum, and then a lot of companies are going to $5 million based on size of the project. So when you're working on a project that's $3-4 million, then it's usually going up to that $5 million point. But I think for the smaller businesses, I think $1 million is fair, and again, $2 million is also fair if it's there's more at stake property-wise or something to get damaged. So, you know, here's the thing. I agree with what you're saying, but I think at this point, I think they went through the process, and I think maybe it should be a conversation in 2 years to see if that's.
Or what I could suggest as part of our budget process to start exploring what that would cost, and then bring that as a comparison as part of our budget process.
Right.
Because, I mean, it does have a termination clause in it.
Yeah. How much notice?
I believe it's 30 days.
30 days, okay. That'd be interesting to see.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councilmember Perez, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so when you put this out for bid, what is that process? Where did you put it out to bid? I mean, do you, because I personally, I know 2 cleaning services that have been asking me to, they're local companies and they're looking for businesses.
The staff will go out and try to find the different businesses and send that information that we are accepting bids. So they just get the information out to pretty much anybody that they can find.
And I couldn't find on here where there was like a total of hours that they're putting in a month.
Oh.
Is that in there? I didn't see that.
Yeah, it'd be on page, or Exhibit A, A1 on page 146 of the packet. It does say how many times they daily service. They don't say the hours, but it says like who they visit.
Yeah, I was looking more for something more specific, like
Okay,
hours.
sorry, no, they don't have
But,
that.
yeah. You know what, I could, how long they been with us?
I'm trying to, it's been, I believe, Christine, do you recall? It seems more around 5 years. Yeah.
And you know, that's great, and I don't think there's any real complaints about their work or anything. I'd like to see this contract go for 2 years and see what other local businesses or other businesses, because I'm not sure that we're reaching out locally to our local vendors. But I would agree to 2 years.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, sir.
I think that both of you, everybody brought up valid points, and I definitely support hiring local. But I think at this point where we're at, I'll definitely support make it a motion if Councilmember Perez will entertain me to to minimize it to 2 years and then to revisit it at that time.
Thank you, but we're going to go now then to any speaker cards, public comments.
I have none.
Okay. So we have, is there a motion?
I'll move to adopt with an amendment of minimizing it to 2 years. I think it was 3 years before.
Yes, it was.
That's my motion.
Okay, is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Councilmember Burns?
No.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes.
Mayor Velazquez?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1.
We are now going to move to item F2.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Sydney Vega. I work in the city's Human Resources Division. It's nice to see you all again. So this item tonight is for to adopt a job description for a senior public works inspector position. We currently have one position budgeted, but it is a newer budgeted position, so we do not currently have a job description yet. This would define a clear outline of the duties and requirements for the position so that we can move forward with recruiting and hopefully filling that. Do you have any
Thank you.
questions?
Are there any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Councilmember Burns?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes.
Mayor Velazquez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We'll now move to item F3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Item F3 is the redistricting, and I do have our consultant, Lapkoff and Goblet, ready to do a quick presentation. But I just wanted to let you know that although I am requesting an appropriation for $61,000, in January, you had already approved on Resolution 2021-15, 52.5, and during the budget process in June, I did not roll that money over from last budget year to this budget year. So I'm requesting that get rolled over. So really, in addition, what I'm asking for tonight is $9,000. That $9,000 would be to cover for up to 8 meetings for Lapkoff and Goblet to attend virtually. And I'm not sure if we'll need all 8, but just it would be a up to. And in addition to that, there is a charge for when the public starts submitting maps that they would like to have changed, or any council member or staff submits a map that they'd like to see the lines be redistricted to. That would cover the cost of up to 20 of those to be reviewed by Lapkoff and Goblet.
Okay, is there any questions from council?
So if I could introduce Shelley Lapkoff and have her go ahead and do the presentation.
Go ahead.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Pleasure to be here remotely with you. I need to share my screen. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that?
We see a
Okay,
not
great.
much, but go ahead.
Shelley, we
go
don't
to
see it.
Start your presentation, and we'll see if we can see it at that point.
But you don't see it.
We just see a dark screen.
Oh, darn. And I feel like mine is frozen right now.
I've got it here. I can pull it up.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Boy, I can't stop sharing because my computer is frozen.
You'll just have
Sorry.
to say next, Shelley.
What's that?
You'll just have to tell us next.
Okay. Do you have it up?
We do. Can you see it?
Okay. I cannot.
I cannot see it either. It says Shelley Lapkoff has started screen sharing, so I think you've got to disable that.
Yeah, the problem is my computer is frozen. I'm surprised you guys can hear me. I can't move it to stop sharing. I don't know what to do other than my whole computer is frozen now. I could turn off my computer and come back on, or I could just talk through the slides, but then the audience, the virtual audience, would not see the slides.
Is Roland, you're not able to see anything either?
No. Yeah. Yeah, we can't.
Why
do
don't
it.
we, maybe you can, we'll come back to you. You can shut down your computer, reboot.
In the
and-
meanwhile, I can tell you a little bit of kind of the process.
Oh wait, that worked. Okay, I'm out.
You're out, okay.
Okay. All right, Christine, why don't you show the slides?
You got it.
I'm glad we have that as backup. Okay.
Can you guys both see it, Mr. Resendez?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can see it. Thank
Okay,
you.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, tonight we're giving you an orientation of the redistricting process for your city in particular. And next slide, please. Can you go back one? Just wanted to introduce ourselves. We've actually been working with Hollister for quite a while. We transitioned you from at-large to by-district elections, and then we redistricted the city after the 2010 census as well. We've been working on redistricting since 1990. We do a lot of various jurisdictions and have for many years. This is our fourth round of redistricting. Jean and I both have PhDs. She from Stanford, I from UC Berkeley. And so we're well qualified to help you with this process. Next slide. So tonight I'll talk about what is redistricting and why you need to redistrict. We'll look at your current council districts. I'll discuss briefly the legal requirements that we follow. Tonight, I believe you're deciding whether to use a commission or not, and we'll briefly discuss the timeline. Next slide. So what is redistricting? Every 10 years, we have a new census. And with the census comes the need to check and see if your council districts are still balanced, still equal in population. And that's a 14th Amendment of the Constitution. It's the most important thing is that people have equal power to elect. And so the council districts must be equal in total population. We have to follow various federal and state laws. One of those is that your city must adopt by April 17th, 2022, the new council districts. They'll be used for the next 10 years until the next census comes out. And incumbents will complete their terms of office even if they no longer live in the district they were elected to represent. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally it does. Next slide. So here are your current city council districts. And this may be familiar to you, but you have 4 council districts. And the next slide shows a close-up of the main area, the heart of Hollister. So you can see some of the boundary lines there. As demographers, we're bound by a lot of different things, including the census blocks, the data that we get. And often the census blocks are awkwardly shaped. So we're constrained by that, but ideally we would use major streets to the extent that we can, so very identifiable boundaries. So this is what was adopted in 2012. And next slide, please. So I want to briefly talk about the legal guidelines that we follow. So we have federal law, and there's 2 major requirements. As I mentioned earlier, the council districts must be equal in population, but we have some leeway at the city level, fortunately. And second is the Voting Rights Act, and that gets a bit of a balancing act. We need to make sure we don't divide protected minority groups, race ethnic groups, for example, the Latinx community. So we don't want to divide them, and we don't want to overly concentrate protected groups as well, because if we over-concentrated them, then they would lose their influence in the other districts. And yet, we had a Supreme Court decision in the early 90s that said you couldn't racially gerrymander. That is, you can't make really oddly shaped districts just to maximize the voting power of protected groups. So we, as demographers, we can't, it's called packing and cracking. We can't pack them too much. We can't crack protected groups, and we can't make oddly shaped districts. So that's from the Voting Rights Act and Supreme Court decisions. And then state law, we have a new state law, the California Fair Maps Act, in 2019 and amended in 2020. And it gives very specific direction on redistricting criteria to use, public outreach. And you are not a charter city, I believe, so that last line does not apply to you. So next slide, please. So I want to talk about the population equality because we have the data that we need to evaluate your council districts. Now, the ideal council district size would be 1/4 of your total population. Now, in the city of Hollister, your population count is 41,890. So 1/4 of that would be 10,473. So that's what we're aiming for each council district. But we get some leeway. And it's called a deviation. The planned deviation would be up to 10%. And what that means is the difference between the least and most populous council district needs to be less than 10% of the ideal district size. And so what all that comes out to is the difference between the smallest and largest district has to be less than 1,047 people. So that's what we're aiming for. Next slide, please. I'll show you what it looks like. So here are your 4 council districts with the 2020 population in the second column. And basically council districts 1 and 2 are too large. We can calculate their deviation either numerically or percentage-wise, but council district 2 is even larger than council district 1. And then council district 3 is about the right size, but council district 4 is too small. And probably in adjusting council district 4, we're going to have to adjust council district 3. So there's going to need to be some shifts in order to get that deviation, which is now 16.4%, to get it below 10%. So that's what we're aiming for. Okay, next slide. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Fair Maps Act because you're required to do various things now that you weren't before. So one is that you have to have a redistricting website and you have to have it up for the next 10 years until the next round of redistricting. And on that redistricting website should be the proceedings that we had during this process. If translation services are requested, you must provide them at your public hearings. You have to offer multiple ways for the public to provide testimony and feedback. And you need public access to demographic mapping data and software. And your city clerk is handling all of that for you. Next slide, please. And you have to hold at least 4 public hearings, and there's specific protocols with those public hearings. And the first public hearing, we cannot present any maps. That is for the public to give any input, including they can draw their own map and present it to us. So that is a way to encourage the public participation. And you need at least 1 meeting after 6 p.m. or on a weekend. You have to have definite starting times for redistricting. So if it's part of your regular council meeting, you need to set a time specific, time certain. You have to specify that for the redistricting part. And you need public notice. And most of the public notice is to be published on your website. Okay, next slide, please. So that was the Fair Maps Act requirements for public participation. The other thing that they did is they said, we did not have this before, they said, here's the criteria you should use to draw your maps. And here's the order of priority for them. So here it is. First and foremost, we have to obey federal law. Number 2 is that the council districts have to be contiguous. So they have to be touching. So you can't have an island off somewhere. So that's a very basic requirement, is at least make them contiguous. And then 3, and this is what's kind of different, is geographic integrity of communities of interest. That's the 3rd criteria. So a community of interest, if people come forward and say, we're a community of interest and we don't want to be divided, then that's an important criterion to follow. 4th doesn't really apply because you are a city. Number 5, easily identifiable and understood boundaries. And as demographers, we're kind of partial to that because when the public looks at plans with easily identifiable boundaries, I think they feel more confident in the plan. Number 6 is geographic compactness. And finally, no political party considerations, which really isn't relevant at the local level because you aren't elected by party, but it's more for the legislature. So those are the criteria that we use. And yeah, next slide is okay. I wanted to go over communities of interest and just give you the quote that's in the law. It's a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single city council district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. So some of the examples, I think probably most relevant for you all, if there are recognized neighborhoods, or there's areas with similar living standards, similar income and education levels, and similar race ethnic groups. And we want to remind people that even though we try our best, there are trade-offs, and often you can't, if you optimize one thing, you may not be able to optimize the other. And what we like to do, what we think our job is to impartially evaluate and just tell you what the trade-offs are in any given plan. What's the pros, what's the cons? And it's not up to us to judge any, which one to choose, but to just lay out the facts as best we can. If you decide to have a redistricting commission, then they would need to understand these trade-offs and explain them to the public. Okay, next slide, which brings us to the question of, do you want a commission? And if so, what kind? And I believe these are not in order of your board report, but I will go through them here. I think we wrote our PowerPoint before the board report. But there are three kinds of commissions: an advisory commission, independent commission, and a hybrid commission. And the fourth option is that you just do it yourself, that you take public input and you look at the maps during either your council meetings or special council meetings. And I'll go over each one briefly. Next slide. So if you have an advisory redistricting commission, which is what you have done in the past, actually, when we helped you, you would appoint the commissioners, and the commission would review the data, conduct public hearings, take public input, draw maps with our help, and then recommend a map or two, map either one or more maps to you, to the city council. And then you decide which map to adopt, which can be the plan recommended by the commission or some other plan submitted. So that's the Advisory Redistricting Commission, also known as ARC. And then option number 2 is an Independent Redistricting Commission. And here, the Independent Commission makes the final judgment. So the city council would not have any say in the plan. Whatever the independent commission suggested is what the plan would be, and you would pass an ordinance to adjust the boundaries per the commission's decision. Okay, number 3, next slide. So then there's what's called a hybrid, which is similar to an independent, but the commission has to come up with a couple options for you to choose from. So they would, at least 2 maps would come your way, and then you would choose among the maps recommended by the hybrid. And then next slide. So the 4th option is that there's no commission and you do it yourself. You would review the data, you would take public input, you would conduct the public hearings and approve the map. Some of the considerations is that it's the shortest timeline, and it's actually the fewest meetings. Like, I don't, if you remember, I said you have to have 4 public hearings. Well, if you have a commission, and if it's an advisory commission, you, the city council, still have to conduct 3 of those meetings, public hearings. So even if the ARC did all their work, you as a city council have to hold 3 public hearings. So it ends up with the most meetings if you have an advisory redistricting commission. Another consideration is you retain final decision about the map. And the reason perhaps not to do it is if you want to separate yourself from the process, or if you just don't want to take the time to do it yourself. Okay, so that's our discussion. And then there's different ways, if you do have a commission, there are different ways to appoint a commission. For the ARC, the council can appoint the commissioners, but if it's an independent or hybrid commission, then either you need to do a random draw or a panel of retired judges can select the commission. And finally, some deadlines and requirements. As I suggested earlier, April 17th, you have to be done. You need to decide soon, maybe tonight, if you're going to have a commission and what type of commission, or whether you're going to do it yourself. The city must have a redistricting page on their website and have it publicly available. And I know your city clerk is busy with that and almost ready to share that publicly. And we recommended that we have the pre-map public hearing in early December, followed by commission or your council meeting starting in January. I talked to Ms. Black and she wants to do it a little earlier than that, and that's fine. I think she'll be suggesting some dates to you that start in November instead of December. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's it. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Maybe we don't need to keep sharing the screen.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. My questions could be for either our presenter or our city clerk. And so I believe I saw where we have to be completed by April 17th of 2022. And so I guess a simple question, and there's probably a common sense answer to it, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless. When you say we have to be done, what does done really mean?
Yeah, and Christine and I were talking about this earlier. You would have to look at, I thought you just had to adopt the plan, but it may be, Ms. Black was suggesting it might be a month before that for a reason. So
that was the only reason why I wanted to up the dates a little bit, because we're thinking it's adopt, but what if it's in effect? So it wouldn't hurt us to move it up just a little bit. So I was thinking of a timeline. Of holding the introduction, at least, of the ordinance on February 22nd at that council meeting, so that the adoption would go on March 7th, and then the ordinance would be in effect by April 7th, meeting that April 17th deadline.
Thank you. I really appreciate being aggressive and being ahead of schedule, because if there are complications that we can't anticipate, if done means truly done, there's no room for delay. And I guess my follow-up to that would be, when we're talking about maintaining the redistricting website for 10 years, is that going to be on the city clerk's portion of the city website, or is that going to be independently placed somewhere? And where and how are we going to absorb and do we even know what the cost for doing that is?
I believe I've already accounted for the cost of that if you guys approve my appropriation tonight. Paul is working, Paul, so it's not just me, but Paul, me, and Lap, Cough, and Goblet, and the, is it
More, Caliber.
Yes, more, are working together to create this web page. However, we're thinking we're going to have them host it, so we just have a link to their site, and then have that done for 6 months, and then take the results of what we've already done and post that on the website. And I was thinking I could put it on the city clerk page, but most people look for that redistricting map on the city council page. So maybe that would be the better place to put it, since they're already knowing to go there for that districting map anyway. So maybe have a little link right there for them to get to that.
Okay. And so if we're talking about the initial cost, do we know, or can we anticipate what the cost is going to be to maintain this link or this page for the next 10 years? And my sense is we ought to just budget line it forever, because if we're going to do this every 10 years and the law says we've got to maintain it for 10, in 10 years, we're going to be having the same conversation again. Maybe not those of us on the dais today, but maybe. And so, again, it'd be nice to lock in some dollar figures so that we can maintain a correct budget.
That would be already included in what I've already asked for. But again, we would only be doing that live link for them to be moving district lines around for 6 months. That's through the duration of this process. Once we have adopted the ordinance with the map, the final map, whatever it is you decide on that map, all that needs to remain up for 10 years is our draft plans, our meeting notes, and of course the final map. Am I correct on that, Shelley?
Yes. So there are two different kinds of web pages. The web page that you're required to keep up for 10 years is just to talk about the process. It should have all the meetings, all the draft maps you've selected, any board reports. It's kind of like a repository of the process.
How we came to our conclusion
And how you're right.
yes.
And then this online mapping software is just up temporarily to help people draw plans. And once that process is over, you don't need that anymore.
Okay. I'm getting crazy-eyed, going right, going up and left. So I don't think I'm cross-eyed, but for the viewing audience, I may appear to be so, out of respect, simply. Follow-up question / comment. I've heard what the options are, and personally, I think I prefer the Advisory Redistricting Commission, and I'm wondering if the commissioners have to represent the existing districts, or could they be at large? And my second question would be, we currently have a general plan review committee that's been established, and I know it's a committee versus a commission. However, could a council member be a member of the Advisory Redistricting Commission? Thank you.
I believe the council member cannot be a member of the redistricting commission, and nor can your staff or anyone associated with your no relative and no one on your election committee, re-election committee, or candidate election. I'm sorry, blanking on what to call that. So there are restrictions. That's about the only restriction for the redistricting commissioners. You can appoint them any way you want, but they cannot be you or your staff or people intimately associated with you.
It would be a family member, spouse, parent, sibling, child, or in-law. I have a list. It's attached in the AB 1276, section 2300. Under section 28, sorry.
But if your general plan review committee, you could use that as long as your council members aren't on there and no relatives are on there.
Okay, certainly something to consider, although we do have 2 council members that participate in that process. So, Shelley, thank you. I very much appreciate you walking me through as a layperson. I think I actually understand this. And Christine,
Yay.
thank you as well. So, Mayor, that concludes my questions, comments, and thoughts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. How long, Ms. Shelley, does the entire process take from beginning to end?
Well, it depends how quickly we have the meetings. So right now we were going to spread them out a fair amount because your deadline is later than some of our other clients. So it's really up to you how quickly you want to do the meetings. But the way Ms. Black suggested it, we would have like 1 a month, and we would need more meetings actually if you have the Advisory Redistricting Commission.
So I guess that's what I was getting at. If we were to do it as a council, so you're saying as we do it as a council as an entirety, we're required to do 4 meetings as a council. If we were to do it as a commission, we still need to do 3 plus the 3 for ourselves plus whatever is required. So that's an additional. So it would be longer to do it as a commission, right?
Yeah, I would say maybe 3 meetings for the commission. It'd be good. So one of those meetings can count as one of your 4. So it would be 3 plus 3. So that would be 6 meetings. And if the commission took longer, 4 meetings, then that would be 7 meetings that we would need to schedule.
And I heard Councilmember Burns' thoughts about having a council member on there. And you know what? I honestly, I'm excited about this process. I agree, but I think that the council should do it just in the sake of time. I would be excited and honored to do this on the weekends and different times. We'd only have to do 4 meetings. And it's a process that we might not ever get a chance to do again. So I would like for the council to consider doing this process themselves, not only for the sake of time, but for a number of reasons. And I know that in the current situation that we're in with the pandemic, it's been a struggle for even the people to get to participate in the GPAC meetings and whatnot. So I would really like for us to do it within the 4 meetings. So that would be my preference, just for the sake of time and for engagement of the community. Another thing to consider is that some of us represent certain areas that are considered historical or downtown areas. So I think that, we were elected by the people and that we know our districts the best. And I would really like to be a part of this process. And I see that Councilmember Burns also was interested in having a council member on there. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Perez?
Personally, I like option 4. I like option 4.
Her option 4, not my option 4, right? Because they're different.
The hybrid?
Which
Mr. Perez? Is that the hybrid you're talking about?
Option 4 is for the council to hold the meetings.
Yeah, for the council. I agree with Councilman or Vice Mayor Resendez.
Yeah, I think it's laid out differently in our packet.
Yeah.
It's kind of reverse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's okay, we're used to it.
Now I'm like Mr. Burns, looking cross-eyed. Trying to figure this out. Is it okay? Is that it, sir? I agree too. I think working through the council, your timeline works. 1 meeting a month. We all know our areas pretty well. I think that would be the shortest way to do it, and also I think we could have a better impact. Having 7-8 meetings, it seems like a lot of extra work for everybody, and then coming back to us. I would prefer going with the number 1-4. The number 1-4 option.
So I would go ahead and type up the timeline for you, but if you wanted to, I was thinking November 15th to have our first pre-map meeting. December 20th would be, and all of these would be public hearings. December 20th, January 18th, with adoption, hopefully, of our, or introduction, I'm sorry, of our ordinance with our map of choice by February 22nd to introduce. Then adopt by March 7th so that it becomes effective on April 7th.
Right.
And that's what
the only thing I would change is the December date. I think 20th, you're in that season, a holiday season.
It's our third council, it's our second council meeting of the month. We have one, it's the first and...
I was thinking we'd have individual or special meetings to do this.
Sure, we could do that too.
I think that'd be easier. We're focused on it. I think Councilmember Resendez is correct. It's kind of fascinating, really, to be part of that. And I think we are kind of fortunate to be part of it.
I could do special meetings on the second Monday of the month, if you'd like that.
I thought
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I think we should really consider, since we're going to have fewer meetings anyway, Christine, I would really like for the new council man or woman to be a part of that process. And I was wondering if we can start when they're already on the council. So instead of November, can we do it starting December?
We'll be thrown off a month if we do that.
Okay, I just wanted to put it out there for consideration. I understand, and thank you.
Well,
It's a good point, but
if we can get a schedule down tonight, I could,
Can you double up in a month?
we could.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
You can have two, and and you may end up with more than 4 public hearings if you can't see, you want to keep fiddling with the map. So that happens too.
Mayor?
So if you wanted to do our first one December 20th,
it's a meeting date, so we'd want to do a special meeting rather than
but the first meeting needs to be kind of a pre-map. What words am I looking for here, Shelley? Our pre-map meeting?
We can't show any maps at the first public hearing. So it's to get people, if there's any public comment on communities of interest, or somebody presents a map to you. So I don't know how much, typically, or there isn't that much public comment until the maps, there's actually a map to respond to. That's typical, but who knows? I mean, somebody might come out with a map themselves.
So as I'm looking at the December month, if we do the incoming council member on the 13th, that would be where we give them their oath. They would be, of course, elected in November, but we would have the results, certify the results on the council meeting of the 6th with any luck, and then do the oath of office for the new council member at a special meeting on the 13th. Then their official first meeting would be December 20th.
or we can throw them into the deep end on December 14th.
I'm with you on that, Mr. Mayor.
They're a council member. I personally would like to have separate meetings for this, so we're, again, really focused in on it, understanding it really well. And I think it's going to be an enjoyable experience to go through this. Councilmember Burns, you had a comment or question?
Thank you, Mayor. I thought I heard Vice Mayor Resendez talk about maybe doing these on like a Saturday, and I think that would be better for community engagement and a special meeting where people can actually come to the council chambers versus necessarily having to zoom in, or it gives them a potential option. And I think that would be helpful. And I'm not convinced that we couldn't move these forward and start doing these in November. Yes, we wouldn't necessarily have an elected council member, but we may have a pending elected council member, pending confirmation of the election. And in addition to that, if more time, I think, is better, because I don't want to rush through this process. And frankly, we've got 5 candidates for Council District 3 seat currently, and there's no reason they all couldn't weigh in during public comment anyway. So I would think that we could accomplish all our interests and have them have the opportunity to weigh in anyway. Why? My fear is April will be here before we know it, and I'm already dreading April because it's tax time, and so I don't want to have conflict. And so I'd rather do this as soon as we could do it without rushing to do it. But I would like to see it at minimum on a weekend moving forward on a special meeting, as the mayor suggested. Thank you, Mayor.
I do like that idea too. Councilmember Perez?
And so you were saying that usually there's not a lot of engagement until the maps come out? Mm-hmm. So even if we had like the first meeting before, like Mr. Burns was saying, before someone's elected, and then once they're elected, the maps to come out, to get a little bit of a head start, to give us some leeway in the holidays and especially tax season for Mr. Burns.
Yeah, though there is the orientation that we give at that first public hearing. And so if you have a new council member, it would be good for them to hear that orientation, or they could review notes or something, but it would be good for them to, I'm going to basically repeat a lot of what I said tonight at that first public hearing.
I think looking at that calendar, November 13th would be a good start point. We know who the new council member is, and I guess it's still away from the holidays, so we're not having that problem.
Yeah.
And then we can move to the next meeting in December. December 11th is when they get thrown into the pool. They get sworn in.
Hold 4 meetings on Saturdays, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I like that idea. I think it's a great point.
So we're looking at November 13th,
November 13th, December 11th,
December 11th?
January 8th, and February 5th. So I think Mr. Burns is making a good point too. We need to make sure we're ahead of this and not scrambling in the end.
Yeah.
So we have room for
I would
Mr.
agree
Burns
with
to
those
follow all
dates.
his taxes.
Shelley, are you available for those dates? Or
Yeah, I'm just looking. The 11th is a little, we have another meeting that Saturday. I don't know whether it's a morning or afternoon, evening, already scheduled. But one of us we can split up. Jean and I can split up. So, just wondering,
Are we thinking mornings, afternoons?
yeah, maybe we could decide this a little later after we
Yeah,
see
we
where
can go through that, but we have an idea I think we're all
Yeah.
agreeing on, from what
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
Yeah,
And then we can kind of just work out the times rather than trying to
Yeah.
do it right now.
okay,
Does that work for you?
yes.
Mr. Resendez, are you all right with that?
I am. I would just ask that the city clerk solicit, like Councilmember Burns said, all the candidates that ran for office should be invited because they'll have feedback to represent that district and most definitely the one that's elected. Thank you.
Most definitely, Vice Mayor, I will be sure to do that. So if we were to keep these dates and maybe just adjust times, we would still be able to introduce on February 22nd so that we could adopt on March 7th with it being effective April 7th, yes? We would still hold those.
Are you saying introduce at the regular meeting?
Yeah, so we could keep the dates November 13th, December 11th, January 8th, February 5th.
Right.
With introducing the ordinance and map that has been selected by then, by the 5th. On February 22nd, we would do the introduction and present the map that has been selected. And then do the adoption of that ordinance on the 7th so that it becomes effective April 7th. It's 30 days after adoption date, so that would just put us under the wire, but we would make the 17th date.
I think this is where I agree with Mr. Burns. It's that is pushing it too close to that line. In your experience, or your expertise, do you think that it would be an issue? Anything would pop up at the last minute that would create a problem for us?
I don't think so, and I think you have till April 17th,
Okay.
actually, but we should check, you should check with council on that.
It's
Yeah,
April
I-
17th.
Mayor, I'd like to, I'd like to ask Mr. Epperson, in your legal experience, could somebody, if they disagreed, could they seek a civil injunction or something to stop us, or something that we need to be hopeful that doesn't happen? And if we do a good job, I doubt would happen. But again, I would like a cushion, because I don't know if this April 17th is a hard date. It seems like it's a hard stop. And so I understand there's a part to the first and the second reading that we can't change that. But do we need to pull this thing forward even further than we're talking about? Because they all seem like reasonable, realistic dates to move it forward. But again, I get a little heartburn. The closer we get to April 17th, the more it's going to be on my mind.
I'm feeling that heartburn too.
Right. And Councilman, I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yes, of course, someone certainly could, and they would do it probably on an ex parte order and try to rush into court because their timeline would be shortened as well. As to how much time we would need for that sort of thing, for better or worse, that we only come across this once every 10 years. So there isn't a great body of experience to know exactly what kind of timeline the court would work on it. But it certainly can be done in the timeline that's been discussed. But if there is any litigation, which I wouldn't expect there to be, but if there is, the more time we have, the better.
With that, I would ask, perhaps January, we can have 2 meetings, one on the 8th and one on the 22nd, so we could be ready on the 8th of February at the
We
first
could
reading.
hold a public hearing on a regular council meeting too, unless you wanted to do all of them on the weekend. So.
If we have to.
We were gonna do the, yeah, on the 8th, we can have it here, and then if we were doing one in December 11th, we could also do it on the 21st, or the 20th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess my concern about the council meetings, we all know that, I mean, tonight, it looks like we might be out of here by 11 o'clock, but we know sometimes they can run really late, and then we're going to really miss what we're really trying to accomplish. That's why I really do like the idea of we're focused on one item on those Saturdays. It gives the community a chance to come out. Hopefully they will. And it gives us that room to make sure we meet our deadlines with some time to spare. So I would just say January is that opportunity to have 2 meetings. We'll be well along the way by that time. And if we pretty much agree on everything by, say, the 22nd of January, then you could have that first reading on the 8th of, or the 7th of February, which will allow us to finalize it at that first meeting in
Well,
April or March.
if you're looking for an extra month, is that what we're?
Yeah,
trying
to make sure
grab?
we're
Okay, so
covered.
then, if we did January 8th, we would need to do January 8th, January 15th. We did January 8th, January 15th. Intro here. Adopt. And then it goes into effect March 7th.
Okay, as we talked about, let's let you figure out some of the times.
That buys us a
And-
whole month.
Yeah, and see what you can figure out to make it work. I think we're trying to pick dates right now, and we've got to look at, have respect for your schedule too.
Well, she
And
has to be included, yes, she has to.
Right.
Yeah, it has
So
to work for her too.
Why don't we, you can work together and suggest the timeline and go from there.
Mayor, one final
Oh,
question,
sure.
thought, maybe. Once we've hit on the actual dates and times and the location, can we put this out on the city website, on social media, and maybe also in the local newspapers? I think it'd be very helpful. I would love to see either this, I'd like to see it so full we have to take it to the vets hall, frankly, because this is big, it is important, and it only happens every 10 years, so we only get one shot to do this right, and we're going to hear about it for 10 years afterwards. So the more community engagement, I think it would just be absolutely a great thing. So I would just ask for that. Thank you.
And because they're public hearings, they must be publicly noticed, but I can advertise, we can definitely do social media.
All right. Do we have any questions from the public?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor. So the 2 items
2
I'm
items.
asking for tonight is for an approval on the appropriation, and then for you to select whether you want to do it ARC or do it yourselves. And I think you guys decided to do it yourselves? Yes.
So first, we'll have a vote on item 3.1, and then we'll give recommendations after that vote, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion on item D1, or 3.1?
So moved.
And that would be with the recommendation of the council.
No, my understanding is that's for the money.
Yeah, it's to
Oh, for the
roll
money.
over.
Gotcha, you're right.
I second
All
that.
right. There's a motion, there's a second. And roll call vote?
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Councilmember Burns?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes.
Mayor Velazquez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Now we'll move to item 2 on that, and that would be for the direction, which would be for the council to lead the project, and you will come back with a timeline
A
to
schedule.
accomplish that.
yes.
Is that all right with the council? Is there consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there is. Well, thank you very much. This is going to be an interesting project. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Shelley.
We'll now move to item G1, reports from city council members regarding their committees. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report.
All right. Councilmember Perez?
Actually, is this where I bring up the squishy? Yes?
Good.
This,
These are for standing committees.
oh, standing committees, okay, nothing to report.
Okay. Vice Mayor Resendez?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
I don't have anything to report either, so we'll move to item G2, informational reports. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. To begin with, I want to thank Mrs. Richmond for the birthday card. I did get it, and thank you very much. I appreciate your personal touch on the card. I wanted to ask well, first of all, I want to thank the city manager, but then I also have some questions. I've seen that the speed cushions have now been placed on Sierra Vista, and I noticed today as I drove down the street there are 3, but are there going to be more? Because my question is, they start very close to Sunny Slope, where you turn off of Sunny Slope onto Sierra Vista, but they're not really in close proximity to the elementary school, which is really the rationale by putting them on. And so I could see if we were going to put one on both sides of the school, one after you turn on from Union and one further closer coming in off of Sunny Slope. But there are 3 speed cushions and at least 1 stop sign controlled intersection that I recall, maybe 2. But I would have thought if the intent is to slow the traffic as it gets close to the elementary school, then they would have been in closer proximity to the school itself. And so my request would be, you could leave the 3 up, you could reposition them, but I would like to at least see a couple in closer proximity to the school. And maybe if you've not been out, maybe you could go out
Yeah.
and take a look at that.
I'll do that tomorrow morning, but yeah.
I appreciate
And I'll
that.
talk to staff about that one also.
Okay. I was going to ask the city attorney, often on council on the dais and often even in closed sessions, we talk about consensus. And I would curious if there is a legal definition of consensus, because certainly I know when all 4 or 5 of us in a 5-member council agree, well, that's a majority, or, that's a complete majority. But in some cases, we might find consensus, is it 2, 3, or more? And so I would like a legal definition. I mean, in most cases, I think we all can align fairly well, but I would like to know what that really means moving forward.
I'm sorry, were you asking for a response now, or would you like me to actually formulate a legal definition?
I don't want to put you on the spot right now.
Oh, I understand. All right.
And so I would just like to hear in the near future what that really is, so that we understand it.
Understood.
A majority is nice, but in some cases we might not get there, but it may still equal consensus. And so for me, I mean, I'm smart enough, I Googled it, I've looked it up in Webster's because I'm old school and I still have a real dictionary. And it does explain it, but I'm not convinced that's necessarily the legal definition. And I presume there must be some case law or some legal definition out there somewhere.
Understood. I'll put something together for you.
I appreciate that, sir.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask council consider through consensus if we could take a look at the existing in place emergency orders that have been issued since COVID has taxed us. And I want to make sure, it's my understanding, because the current council didn't necessarily weigh in on this because we weren't on the council at the time, but I want to make sure that we're all of understanding, although we might not all be in agreement as it relates to the emergency orders. It's my understanding that there was a fairly clear direction from the previous council, and my fear is that it may be a direction that was more to the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And I want to make sure that we are not going to overzealously pursue or enforce with a draconian effect on things. And so I'd like to maybe have that, and whether it be in public comment, or not public comment, but during the general council meeting or in closed session, I would very much like to go and take a look at that so that I understand what it was versus what it may be or what it needs to be. So I'd put that out to the council, and hopefully I can get support from the council on that. I wanted to ask again, I know that Mr. Prado's in the audience, and public comment regarding catering and food vending. I don't know if we have a checkoff list or something like that, and I know a certain element of it also involves the county permitting, and so I would like to better understand that. I'm hoping that maybe Mr. Prado, through the city manager's direction, could do a educational presentation at a council meeting in the near future so that we can better understand that. I know that there are some very progressive jurisdictions out there that have a wide range of requirements but opportunities. And the catering, the food vending, the food truck business has come light years since I remember it 30, 40 years ago, to where it's now kind of a niche thing. And there's a lot of great companies out there, and they're not fly-by-night. I mean, you could easily spend $100,000 on a catering truck in a heartbeat in today's world, and they're legitimate businesses. But I also want to be considerate of our brick and mortar businesses as well. And so I would like to have just a general presentation. I think we could benefit from that, as well as the community at large. So, I wanted to ask also if at sometime in the near future we could get an update on sound wall maintenance. I've heard some really encouraging things. I've heard and seen that maybe Caltrans is going to let us take control of the airline highway, and I'm very excited by the potential. I think our site appearance is important, and I'd also like the council to consider maybe pursuing taking control of our mobile home park in Hollister, because the state will give that up if you ask for it. I'm familiar with a jurisdiction that recently just was granted that authority, not to address housing necessarily, but more to address public nuisance related issues. And there's clearly a process if the council had the will to move in that direction. I would like to deal and look at that as well. And I believe I'll call it good for now. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Perez.
First of all, I'd like to thank Jose Fernandez for his service to the community, for being on the Planning Commission. Just wanted to thank him for that. And the other one, let me see, sesquicentennial. Did I get it right? The 150th birthday celebration for Hollister. I'd like to get that agendized for the next agenda meeting. And I think I've been meeting with the various members of the community, Integrated Waste Management, the awesome Chamber of Commerce, and the awesome Hollister Downtown Association, and other members of society, of our community. We got some good things coming up, really good things. So I'd like to get that agendized. Also, I'd like to get an update on I believe it's the Tyler 311, the Civic Plus, that app that we were going to be getting for our city. If there's any update where we're at with that.
If I may, we're currently still working on getting that all set up. There's two parts. There's the one that connects through the website, where people can come up to the website and report anything and upload pictures, and if they found a pothole and they want to upload a picture that way. We're also working on the app that goes along with that. They kind of tie in together. There's some issues on the back end we're trying to work out with Tyler, and we're still working on that stuff out. But in the near future, it'll come out. I can't really say a date when that's going to, because we've had some problems setting that stuff up, but we are working on that.
Oh, awesome! Because I know you juggle a lot. You are the man.
Yeah.
But no, I was just wondering for a quick update, and thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what else do I have? Wanted to welcome Amazon to our community. I with Mayor Ignacio were there. Incredible system that they have there. And I was curious, did your wife get the first package?
Oh, there was several packages waiting
Okay.
at the house, yes.
Yeah, but no, I just wanted to welcome them. And you know what? It's through this the whole COVID stuff we've been going through, and lately it seems like there's been a few ribbon cuttings to go that I've been attending, and it's really great to see our community thriving in that direction. And there's I'm just really proud to be a member of this community. You guys, from our staff to the city staff, police and fire, especially our city staff up here, it's really great. But yeah, and once again, thank you, Jose.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Resendez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of things. Now that school's back in session, I'm getting calls for traffic concerns about the safety of our students, particularly along Buena Vista and Apricot. I've spoken to the staff, and the staff always does a fantastic job. Of course, I go through the city manager. I let him know. He has communicated with Abraham Prado about Buena Vista, and he gave an update. And Abraham is very good at communicating with the community members and then getting back to me. So I'd like for us to prioritize that. And Abraham did tell me that's coming to the council soon. We're done with Central Avenue, and Buena Vista is part of our Complete Streets program. And I'd like to see that come to fruition, because we do have another housing project that's going to be built on Buena Vista, and people are moving here and they're concerned. And we always have been about the safety of the children going to Calaveras. Apricot is another big one. And again, I brought my concerns to the city manager. We all have money allocated for traffic studies. And my understanding is that there will be a traffic study on Apricot. So that's Rancho, no, I'm sorry, not Rancho. R.O. Hardin and Calaveras. We need to ensure that the children have a safe route to school there. And then Councilmember Perez brought a good point. Amazon, and I communicated this with the mayor. I was really sad that I didn't get to go to that. But I do work during the day. So what I would ask, and I know that Councilmember Burns also does work, and our schedules are probably not as flexible as other council members. So I would really like, whenever we do these events, that we all get invited first and foremost, and that we do our best to make it around a time that we can all attend. That was something I was really just sad. They did a great job. I saw all the pictures. I'm glad we have representation there. And it was really fun. And I would have loved to have been a part of that. So I too want to welcome Amazon, and I'm glad that you guys all did go. But next time I want to go too. That's my report. Thank you.
Well, since my wife shops every day on Amazon, I'm sure Saturdays or Sundays would be just fine for the next one. So I want to give my updates. And as was mentioned, Amazon, congratulations for opening your facility here. Really is an impressive operation. I think one of the things that really stood out for me, sometimes people will talk about a company, whether it's fair or not, as far as the wages. One thing that was very interesting with Amazon is the person that's running that entire 130,000 square foot facility started at Amazon a little over 2 years ago, stocking the trucks. And now he is the manager of this entire facility. That kind of shows you what their commitment is to their employees. They want their employees to move up and take the opportunities they have to offer. So that was pretty exciting. It was fun, obviously, to be with everyone and load the first package onto the truck. So looking forward to their success. The new shopping center, as I understand it, is hoping to do a groundbreaking ceremony, and we'll make sure it's on a Saturday. I think they want to do that late in October. We'll check to make sure that is still on schedule. Councilmember Burns and I did start with as we talked at the last meeting, created the ad hoc committee beautification of our community. There are several projects that we want to be working on. The sound walls, working with more professional companies that have the staff to really go through there on a monthly basis and make sure they're trimmed correctly, the correct irrigation, all those things that need to be done monthly. We're looking at how we can do that. Looking at what we can do as far as many of the trees in our town. If you look through different areas of our city, you'll see areas where the sidewalk is lifting, some places very high, and some kids appreciate that. It's a place for them to practice their skateboarding skills. But that happens because the wrong trees are put in. Homeowners over time decided they want a different type of tree and put one in, not realizing the consequences of planting the wrong type of tree, the root system. So one of the ideas is, how can we work with the homeowners to give them back the rights to really maintain the trees and take ownership of their own trees, and recommendations on how to water them correctly so we don't keep having this issue of sidewalks lifting. That was one of the conversations. As Councilmember Burns mentioned, Airline Highway between Santa Ana and on through, really through Sunny Slope, they're looking at, we requested that they allow us to take over maintenance of that. And they are working through their process to give us that authority so we can do that. And at the same time, we are applying for a grant to beautify that whole corridor, which would be very exciting. It could be very beautiful. We do see weeds and tumbleweeds right now, and it's very frustrating for all of us. But at this point, it is Caltrans property, and we're not allowed to just go in and do what we want there. That's a very important step we'll be taking. As Mr. Burns mentioned, also the mobile homes in the property, there are ways to give us a little more authority on that. I fully agree with that, and I'm looking forward to some of the recommendations Mr. Burns is going to bring to us from some of the other experience he's had. With the mobile homes, there's been a conversation of RVs throughout our community for several years. We had been working on that new policy several years ago, and that had stopped for different reasons, COVID and so on. But it is time for us to go back to that policy. Right now we have several RVs parking in different areas of the city. Some people may say that's not a big deal, but when that RV does leave, it always seems to leave with a whole pile of trash behind it. And it's really not fair to some of the different neighborhoods. So we need to get that into check so we have a policy in place that, of course, you can park your RV if you're going to be using it to go for a camping trip. And we had the 3-day pass, I believe it was 72 hours in the past. We need to get back to that to get that permission. And those that are not getting their permission, they can be cited. So we want to keep moving towards some of these ideas. And also the homeless cleanup, I believe that's going to happen again real soon. We are working with the county. County is doing their part to try to get more land, more building space so they can house more of the homeless, and make sure that we do meet all the legal requirements and make sure that the homeless are getting the services they need. It's not an easy thing. Sometimes people say just arrest them all. Well, you don't just arrest your way out of homelessness. You give the treatment people need, and we can get to a better place soon. And I'm looking forward to continue working with our partners and again working with some of the ideas we have. Now, going back to downtown, the rainy season's coming. Can we get those engineers to talk about what we need to get the covers on top of our parklets? So we give them well, I don't know if we say rainproof, but give them a place they can still have their customers sit outside. Those have been such a major success, and I was having dinner at one of them recently and just really love the atmosphere of what it brings to our downtown. So any help we can provide them would be, I'm sure, greatly appreciated from them. And that's all I have. City Manager?
Yeah, we'll take care of business first. Councilmember Burns asked by consensus if we can talk about the emergency order. Is that okay with council to bring back?
I guess I wanted clarification. When you said the emergency order, what exactly are we talking about?
I'm talking about any emergency order that was issued by the state or by the county since COVID has come on board.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yeah, hang on for a second, though. But I'll get right back to you, Mr. Resendez. You mean So here, we work off of the state order and then only from the doctor only. The county itself cannot issue an order. It has to be from the state or from the doctor, I believe, is how we were doing it at one point when we finally.
Correct. The last one I
decided to-
believe we left off was a state or county health officer.
Yeah. So is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Now go ahead, Ms. Resendez, you had a question on that?
Not necessarily a question. I was just going to say that we're headed into the flu season. I would be very reluctant to make any changes until after the flu/winter season. Again, I understand the points that you make and I agree with you, but I would not like to revisit anything or to make any changes until after the flu and /cold season. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you have any?
Only I'm not necessarily proposing to make changes. I would like to better understand what the previous council spoke about so that we can either be all on the same page, or maybe we will deviate, or maybe we will get consensus, maybe we won't. But I really want to have a conversation is really what I'm proposing at this time, whether it be in the public or in closed session.
To understand what happened in the past. I don't have an issue with that. Again, I understand, you know, well, we had the unfortunate experience of being there when it all happened. I understand you guys weren't, but it's important to understand how we came together, what rules we were following, and then where we're at today with those rules. As I said, no longer is it county; it's only state or health doctor rules. But I can understand your question. I can support you on that for a conversation, not to change the rules, but to understand how we got to the rules. Is that what you're asking for? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Perez.
I don't know if I can add this. Actually, today, when you guys brought up the homelessness, I was thinking about, I actually met some Pacific Union police officers today. They are going through the area, and I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. And then again, I would just point out that I would like to wait to have that conversation, Councilmember Burns, if it's okay, after we have the new council member, councilwoman, councilman, so that we don't have to repeat it twice. So if we could just wait until December, that would be probably ideal.
I respect that, Vice Mayor. I would like to have it sooner, and if we need to have it again, I'm certainly open to that, but there are certain things that are time sensitive that I'd like to have a better understanding about, that unfortunately the new council member won't be on board at that point.
This could be, are you requesting this closed session or in public?
I'm open to either. I would defer to our attorney.
If it's all right with the council, what I prefer to do is look at the request and look at exactly what we bring back and then make that decision and have staff put it on either open or closed as is appropriate.
That's fair.
Thank you.
I believe there was a consensus on that, if you can make that recommendation.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I took it out as.
Okay.
We'll get the definition, but that's what I believe we got is consensus. Councilmember Perez brought back asking for consensus to bring back the funding for the 150 and probably maybe a status of where we're at so far with the 150-year anniversary. Is council okay with that we bring that back?
I'm on board.
Yeah, I think it's important for the HCA and chamber to kind of present some of their ideas. We can share that and have a conversation so we're all on the same page on it.
Okay, perfect. Also, just to let council know that the staff has started working on the improvements at Clower Park. You'll see that they actually tore some things out, and they're just getting it ready to put some cement slurry in there and then start putting in the actual new equipment.
Great.
And that's all I have to report.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, City Attorney.
Thank you. No statement, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. I just wanted to give an update on, I wanted to report that for the first time, the city clerk's office did not receive candidate FPPC filings by the FPPC due dates for our special election in November. It's never happened before. I don't know. I don't understand why, but I did send out an email. I've never had to send email reminders before. And after I sent the email, I did receive 3 out of the 5. One of our candidates is not following our resolution 2021-129 on campaign finance reform. All FPPC forms received have been posted on the City of Hollister's City Clerk's webpage under elections, and I'll just continue to post them as they come in. That's it. Thank you.
I would ask, when you say they're not following the rules, what?
The resolution states there's certain resolution on campaign finance reform has specific
Requirements regarding reporting and dollar limits and that sort of thing, I think is what the city clerk is referring
Yes.
to. And that appears not to have been followed, or at least we don't have the evidence that it's been followed at this point. And I'm sorry, did I hear you mention that that material would be provided online?
everything I have received to so far
Right.
has
And-
been provided online, and will continue. I'll continue to update it as I receive it, but that's all I can do. I'm just reporting that out because it's just unusual.
So, over the limits, I think I heard, what are we talking about? What kind of dollars are we? I mean, if they're
I don't
over-
want to specifically probably say, but I have posted everything that I have on the website, and it'll be pretty, I'm just letting you know that this is just super highly unusual.
So if I go to the city website, look at your area of expertise, and my sense is what you're telling me is I probably could draw some conclusions. And based on those, if I wanted to ask you questions at the next council meeting, there'd be nothing that would prevent me from asking those questions, would there be?
Well, Councilmember Burns, it depends on exactly what the questions are. I would say occasionally, depending on what the questions are, and I'm sure yours are all very appropriate, but it could put the city clerk in an unusual position, but it's certainly something we're willing to discuss with you.
Is there a chance that we could agendize this for closed session for the next regularly scheduled council meeting? I think by then,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just thinking by then there may be some questions that I will have, and maybe it's best to be in closed session. I don't know if it's going to put the city in some financial concerns or litigation concerns. You know, for me, I take offense to the fact that there are ordinances that this council has worked hard on, and people are, it sounds like they're either intentionally ignoring the requirements, or they're receiving bad advice. I don't know until I go and look, but I absolutely will be there tomorrow morning. And, it kind of makes a mockery of the system if people aren't going to play by the rules. There need to be clear and defined consequences. And so maybe that's why it would be best in closed session, although I'm happy to talk publicly once I have an understanding of what I've heard this evening. I'm more than happy to be candid and direct. I mean, there was a specific intent and a purpose for those, and if people are just going to disregard them, well, then I have some real challenges with the integrity of those individuals.
Understood, Councilmember Burns. Any discussion in closed session, everything's supposed to be an open session. The closed session items are essentially an exception to the rule that everything's in open session, and there are a series of items that you can discuss, and we're very limited by that. Whether or not that fits within it, I'm not certain that it does, but I'll certainly take a look at it. If it is, we can, I bring everything into closed session that I think is appropriate and the council need to be aware of and needs to discuss in closed session.
Sure. So then maybe we schedule for open session, and then if it starts to go that direction, stop me, and we can schedule it for a future closed session, because the rules are made not to be broken. There can be an exception, but I think the spirit of the ordinance is clear, and it was done with a specific intent. And so I take offense to anybody that's going to blatantly disregard the city clerk's inquiries and the direction of this council as it's based on the ordinances that are codified.
Understood.
Thank you. Councilmember Perez, go ahead.
I think this brings up a lot of stuff that was overlooked when we did all this stuff. First of all, are these FPPC violations? Any of these or are they just our city code, our city?
Yes.
They're just our city?
They are
Well,
FPPC violations.
So-
We want to avoid drawing any legal conclusions or even going too far in the discussion
could-
of non-agendized item, but
Missing
there's-
a deadline
Right.
So,
could be construed as a,
I mean, if I guess my thing is, first of all, if we're being offended because they're not following the rules, what are we going to do? What are you going to do? Second of all, if it's an FPPC violation, aren't they in charge of disciplining or fining or working on that? Because, and it's like, what are we going to do about it? Be offended? You're going to tell them they can't run?
I think we should be offended, and I think
No,
Councilmember Burns is correct.
it's not being offended. It's like, what action is there going to be done?
I think that's part of the reason we worked on those new rules, was to make sure that,
So where's the teeth in this? How are we going to punish them?
well, I think that's what we look at. We have to look at what teeth do we have on our side to enforce any of the rules, and if we don't have that, make sure we're implementing some sort of
I guess my-
fine or something, because, how do you run for office and out of the gate not follow the rules?
So I guess I understand what you're saying. I
That's
get
just
it. I
not
get
right.
it.
It's not fair for the
Well,
public.
I mean,
I am concerned that we're
We're going too far in the
we're
conversation.
discussing an item that's not actually agendized for discussion.
Okay. If we can get
I have
the-
some questions, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Christine, when do the mail-in ballots go out?
they are, I believe the last I heard from the county is that they would be mailed out on the 7th.
Thank you. So Councilmember Burns, I'm concerned about your request because I think it's going to be a little bit too late. I have got some more questions. Christine, were all of the requirements communicated to the candidates?
Yes.
So I'm at home, I can look up I know how to navigate through and I can look it up. The candidate that's collecting, did they sign?
No, hang on a second. We don't want to go, we can't go
Councilman-
there right now.
Yeah,
That'd be
Okay,
going
I've
too
got
far.
more questions. I've got
Go
more
ahead, sir.
questions.
Go
Did
ahead, sir.
everybody sign the agreement to abide by the rules?
At this time, candidates were provided the agreement and provided the ordinance and provided the resolution on campaign finance reform, but are not at this time required to sign.
Thank you. I'm not going to get into specifics, but this is something that is very concerning to me. And I've mentioned this before. The decisions that we make at the council, at the dais, can make people millions of dollars, period. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not accusing anybody, but according to our code of ethics that we adopted as council members, we have an obligation to police each other when we are not following those rules. We also have an obligation to protect the public's interests. I take great offense to people not following the rules, especially because I was a victim of what's going on now. It creates an unfair disadvantage to people. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Can you send us an email tonight of describing what's going on, or should we go look at, how do we find this information so we know what's going on? And then if they're not following the rules, can we have, if there's no enforcement, is that something we can come back, have an emergency meeting to put in some type of enforcement or fine or something? I mean, how could we
can
be in this
cons-
situation?
Again, I'm very concerned that we
We're going
we
too
are
far. Okay.
approaching or surpassing the line between a city clerk report versus
Thank you.
city council discussing an item not agendized.
We'll leave it at that then. Yeah. Thank you for that. All right. Anything else you have to report? Chief, do you have any report?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I wanted to remind everyone is that we're starting our annual fundraising in October for cancer awareness. Our officers are authorized to wear the pink patches, and they're also, some of them are paying a fee, a donation to be able to have facial hair. All that money that's generated this month is going to go to a nonprofit here locally. And for the months of November and December, the POA, the Hollister Police Officers Association, is also doing their donations for those months. And my understanding is that for November, it's going to go to prostate cancer research. And they haven't decided what nonprofit they're going to be giving the money to for December. But over the course of the few years that we've been doing this, they've given over $10,000 locally with this fundraising effort. But anybody interested in the coins, the pink coins, or the patches, they're for sale at the police department until they run out. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move to item G4.
Or did we go-
G3,
Yeah,
actually.
G3.
Yeah.
Did I skip over one? Yeah, G3.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This is just a presentation for the public and in open session to kind of go over what the City Clerk's department does. I've prepared an overview of the status of the City Clerk's office. The City Clerk is a local official for elections, local legislation, the Public Records Act, the Political Reform Act, and the Brown Act open meeting laws. The City Clerk serves as a liaison between the public and the City Council and provides related municipal services. The City Clerk's office is currently a two-person department. The City Manager's office had authorized the hiring of a Deputy City Clerk on May 12, 2018. The City Clerk's office works on the City Council agendas and packets. We create the agendas and packets prior to a meeting and after each meeting. We process the City Council agenda packets, scan, obtain city signatures, notarize, record, and file. We are the elections official for nominations, FPPC. We work with San Benito County Register of Voters, and I work the elections with them. Local legislation auditor, municipal officer, political reform filing officer, records and archives, public inquiries and relationships, City Council support services, fireworks permits, ABC licenses, claims against the city, claims for the city, public assembly permits, parade permits, block party permits, banner requests, proclamations, recognitions, notary, receive subpoenas and summons. We receive appeals for the Planning Commission. We take submitted City Council authorized documents that need to be recorded to the County Recorder's Office. We do oaths of office for all new and promoted personnel. For commissions, we advertise, accept applications, create staff reports, follow up correspondence, acquire assuming/leaving 700 forms, which are your statements of economic interest. We communicate with each other by providing names and emails and phone numbers of who their contact will be and provide them agendas, and who their contact will be to provide them agendas and provide them their meeting times. We also have special assignments from Council, Hollister Municipal Code changes, campaign reform. For the Fair Political Practices Commission, we make sure that they have their 700 form statements of economic interest. Not all employees, we keep their 700 forms, but only our 87-200 filers need to be turned into the FPPC for the 700 form. The campaign forms, 87-200 filers only, which also includes the Planning Commission. And we ensure ethics training compliance. Electronic programs implemented with, of course, our IT department. March 2018, IQM2, we did the minute track, agendas and minutes. We still have some occasional issues. Most of those turn out to be human error. In May of 2018, we changed to MuniCode for our Hollister Municipal Code, which has a more modern look, has the ability to download in Word, email, and the ability to use Google Translate. In September of 2019, we acquired NetFile, which is electronic campaign and conflict of interest filings and tracking of ethics and harassment trainings. February of 2019, we upgraded Laserfish to Avante. Electronic repository, I should say Paul upgraded Laserfish to Avante. Electronic repository for records, public access through web link to search for documents and promote transparency. In March of 2020, we acquired Zoom, worked intensively with Information Systems and Technology Director to work out how to best use Zoom for council and commission meetings. And September 8th, we obtained e-signature software. Electronic programs still in progress. We're currently working with Municode to perform the state law referencing. I'm working with City Attorney Epperson on that for our entire Hollister Municipal Code to ensure our code complies with state law and provide links where applicable. In January 19th of 2021, you approved our contract with Lapcoff and Goblet. You got to meet Shelley tonight to have her on retainer at that time. And our first meeting with her was tonight. We have an election scheduled for November 2021 for the District 3 special election. And we will be holding another election November 2022, which would be our general municipal election. We established our relationship with San Benito County Elections Department, starting further back than probably most of Jerry's years, for me, 2014, and continues the relationship by working elections for the county. Events and training, our annual training programs for myself and the Deputy City Clerk is New Law and Elections. That's where they introduce the new laws and changes and we learn how they affect us in the council. The City Clerks Association of California holds their annual conference. I'm hopefully going to attend the Pacific Leadership Program my second year next year. And I'm hoping Nova receives her Master Municipal Clerk certificate by 2022. Electronic programs for the future. We are currently looking at purchasing a Public Records Act software program. Would help us not only define how many Public Records Act requests we get, but also which departments are being hit the hardest. So the data may not only help us keep track of it and keep it organized, but maybe show which departments may need more staff to help with that. The only other thing we could think about for a possible future electronic program would be a boards and commissions program to help facilitate the filing of council vacancies. We looked at one, but it was way too expensive for what we do. We couldn't see spending that amount of money for that. So, and I believe that's it. Our city clerk's record retention and destruction, that's constantly ongoing. We'll be celebrating our City Clerks Week the week of May 1st through 7th in 2022. And we're still working on archiving resolutions into the binders. For Hollister Municipal Code, again, we're working with the Municode state law referencing and working with the city attorney to create an ordinance to add a section campaign finance reform to the Hollister Municipal Code. Claim status, I just received a new report this week, so I'll be sure to continue to send those claim statuses to council. And thank you for allowing me to share that with you.
Thank you. Any questions for council? Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Madam City Clerk, thank you for what you and your staff do. It's amazing. I think this is a classic example, again, of why I think it would be very important, not only for the city clerk, but I think the chief of police and the police department have set a good precedent by issuing an annual report. I think often when people come into the city of Hollister, we're small, we're friendly, excuse me, and we're busy. And I'm blown away by all the things that you and the staff of one do. And so, thank you. I City Manager, I would really like to see an annual city report, whether it be calendar year or fiscal year. I think there's a good template from what the chief has established, and I think the community could benefit from seeing that online to know exactly what each department does. I would actually like to see maybe each department report out once a month to walk through all the departments, because I'm sure each of the department heads could speak to the same degree and level that the city clerk has, although they have bigger staffs. And so I think that's good. Christine, I only have one other question for you. Do you do weddings as well?
Actually, city clerks are able to, I forget the word,
Marry people?
ordain, yeah.
Ordain, yeah.
Yeah.
You can actually too.
No. Why would I take away from the city clerk's opportunities?
But we haven't even tried to implement that here, namely because the county does it, so.
I think we might do it better. So I'm just saying, thank you. Seriously, thank you for what you do and what your staff does. It's amazing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I think that was a short list.
Yeah, I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, thank you for all you do here. We'll now move to item G4.
Item G4. I have received a request to fly the prostate cancer awareness flag the month of November 2021. So I am just seeking council consensus.
Any questions from council? Absolutely support this. I thank you, Mr. Burns, for bringing this forward. It's very important. So please support it. Do you have a comment, sir?
Thank you, Mayor, I do. I'd like to take credit for this, but I can't. One of our members of our community has approached me and had quite a story that I'll leave as personal and not bring forward. But again, I think this is a classic example of what that community and the unity pole should be used for. And the community member is also going to provide the flag, which is an American flag that is, as I recall, it's a gray and black color, and it's flown vertically, and it's got a blue or a teal color ribbon on it with the word to the right, fight. And I think it's so important that we as a community fight to support our community and any of the people in our community that are suffering from prostate cancer, any other form of cancer, and frankly any other illness as well. So I very much hope the council will move forward to support this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions or comments from council? Is there a consensus to move forward?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. There's a consensus to go ahead and move forward with the flag. Thank you. Again, thank you, Mr. Burns.
Item F5 is mine. Again?
G5?
Oh, G5, I'm sorry, G5.
Sound like we're going back to F again?
So, at the August 26th Planning Commission meeting, we had Planning Commissioner announce his resignation and that night would be his last night. Since that night, I have tried to receive a letter of resignation. I've sent 4 emails, a phone call, plus a request from our net file system because he has to do a 700 leaving form. I've not received a response from him, but my final email to him stated that if I didn't hear back, that would be considered his resignation letter, although I was hoping he would confirm that. I still have not heard, so rather than wait any longer, I'm requesting from council if we can go ahead and advertise to fill the position. And since that time, I've had another resignation from the Planning Commission, so we now have 2 openings. We currently still have a quorum of 3, but we're down 2.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I think Councilmember Burns, were you about to make a comment?
A question, actually.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Thank you. And again, maybe this is more of a city attorney question, and I'm not suggesting that this planning commissioner or any others have abandoned their responsibilities. And I understand life drives us to do things spontaneously. But I'm wondering if it would be helpful to have somewhere in our ordinances something where if somebody fails to attend a meeting for, you pick the number 2, 3, or more, that is considered an abandonment of their assignment or their duty, and at that point we move forward, because we can't be limited by our ability, and in this case now we're down to 3, and I'd like to move forward, and I think the city clerk has gone above and beyond the responsibility. Now we do have the video that clearly stated that I reviewed, and so I don't know if there's a need to do that. Maybe it already exists, and I'm ignorant about that. But if not,
It does exist, Councilmember Burns. It's part of the bylaws.
problem solved. Thank you.
And I can follow up with the city clerk regarding that, making sure that in fact that we've met whatever the requirement is in the bylaw, which I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it is there. Councilmember Resendez is correct about that.
Thank you.
Mr. Perez, you had a comment?
Did we have other applicants that we were considering at that time? Or this was just appointed? These were just appointed, correct?
These are
Yeah.
appointed, correct.
Yeah.
I could go back and look to see who wasn't selected and call those and see if they're still interested, but I would still like the opportunity and
To put it out,
request
yes. Definitely.
to at least advertise and put it out there. But if you guys would rather me just look at our pool, if you will, I thought we had several.
I think we
from
did,
back then,
but I'd like to see it go out again anyways, but yeah.
I could definitely include those as, I'll contact them, see if they're still interested, and then include those in your pool.
Yes, that's
Okay.
what I was, yeah, just to add them back in.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair to the public, put it out there, and you might find people that you didn't know before that are interested. That'd be helpful. And as far as going back to the resignation, I think maybe Mr. Burns is making the point, I think you're making the point that if someone was to resign at a meeting, that could be the resignation, so we're not having to go through a process of waiting to see if it was true or not. If somebody says, I'm resigning tonight, they resigned, type of a deal.
Yeah, I think that would require amending the bylaws, which again, I don't remember off the top of my head, but if I remember correctly, it would, which is not a problem. That can be
Yeah,
done.
I think that's important
to
because
account for
I think
that.
there's lost time there, as we're
Mr. Mayor?
seeing. So, go ahead, Mr. Resendez.
Thanks. I'm just wondering, I thought I heard Christine say there's only 3 planning commissioners. Is that true? And if so, then which 2? I heard the last one that we're talking about. Which is the other one that resigned?
Salvador Mora resigned as well.
But
So who's
And
the other one?
Jose Fernandez.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Thank you.
But you did receive his resignation? Okay, good. Perfect. Thank you. So I think we're all in agreement to put it out there again to the public and
Definitely,
go through?
definitely.
Okay,
And I'd like the suggestion, if I can, Mr. Mayor.
go ahead.
Remembering the bylaws, I don't think it includes that if somebody says that they're going to resign at a meeting, that it's considered a resignation. So I agree with, it would have to go through the planning commission or the city clerk, I think, to bring it to all the commissions. And then we have to adopt it at the council level final.
I think so, because I think, as Mr. Burns says, life goes on, and sometimes people will say something and then they just want to move on with their life. But legally here, we have to follow certain rules, and that puts us in a bind like we're seeing now.
If perhaps I could get help from Jason with language, then I could send that out to each commission so that they can post it on their agenda for an approval from the commission, and then have it brought back and adopted by council.
Certainly. I think we have direction, so.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
All right, H, I, J, and K, there's no business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Perez?
Yes.
Councilmember Burns?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes.
Mayor Velazquez?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-0.
And thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight.
Good night, everybody.
Lightning speed meeting tonight.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Recording stopped.
Did they win or lose? I had a Vets Commission meeting. Did you get my?